Welcome to Soul Sessions with me, Emma. It's really lovely to have you here. After years of working in education, traveling, coaching, and simply listening to people, I realized something. Everyone has a story to tell. And that's what inspired Soul Sessions with Emma. It's a chance to slow down, get beyond the surface, and discover the experiences that have shaped the person sitting in front of me. I hope you enjoy this conversation. And if you do, please don't forget to subscribe, share with somebody, and leave a comment. Enjoy. Today's guest is a returning guest, and I'm so excited to have her with me today. When Michelle first joined me, she shared her fascinating journey from a successful international career in hospitality to becoming a healer, hypnotherapist, and therapist. And we spoke about, at the time, a book she felt deeply called to write. At that point, Menopause Wingman was still being brought to life. And today, Michelle returns not as someone preparing to release a book, but as a published author who has watched that original calling open doors she never could have fully predicted. Menopause Wingman, the Emotional Handbook for Partners, is a warm, practical, and emotionally intelligent guide for the husbands and partners of women navigating menopause. It helps move someone from, I don't know what to do, to, I've got you, and reminds us that menopause isn't only an individual experience, it can be a journey that transforms an entire relationship. So since we spoke last year, Michelle has published the book, appeared on Ireland AM with her husband John, spoken on radio and in the media, and begun developing new ways of supporting both women and their partners. And in today's conversation, we're going to hear more about the success of the book, the contents of the book, and what can happen when we listen to the quiet voice telling us that there is something we are meant to do, and find the courage to follow it before we know exactly where it will lead. Welcome back to Soul Sessions with Emma, Michelle. It's so lovely to have you returning.
Thank you, Emma. I am absolutely delighted to be here and relieved we got the tech thing sorted, you and I.
Exactly. We actually scheduled this podcast last week. We had an awful time getting the connection. As we were saying just before I recorded this, sometimes you just have to accept that it's not meant to be and just let it go and start again.
Absolutely. I think that's so key. I think sometimes we can sort of try and force something and force it into being and force it into, something that the timing maybe isn't right, or, that we're not ready, or that the people who are listening or potentially going to be listening, are also not available. So I think for whatever reason, divine timing kind of stepped in, and here we are now, and it's
exactly.
much better,
And I think that is a theme as well in your journey, Michelle, which we're going to find out again today and revisit it. Because I know when you were sharing your story in the podcast last year, there were so many little synchronicities, and I think we're going to find out today more synchronicities that have happened since we last spoke, which is amazing. So if you wouldn't mind taking us back, Michelle, to the journey behind the book, the pen to paper, as it were, and how it came to be.
Absolutely, Emma. So I had no intention whatsoever of writing a book. I was looking for different clients, more international clients, and wanting to share the work that I'm doing now, which is really helping women emotionally and deal with the emotions that are coming up as we go through menopause. So a lot of things that maybe we think we've dealt with come up again to be looked at once more during the menopause. And so it's really good to have someone to support you and guide you through that. So I had gone on a Zoom call and was in a Zoom room with two other people. And Richard, one of the guys, said, "Off you go, Michelle, tell us what you're doing." So I said, "Yep, this is what I'm doing. I support women emotionally through the menopause based on my own 10-year journey of doing it naturally." And he stopped me in my tracks, and he just said, "You should write a book for men. If I'd had that, maybe my marriage might have survived." And it was just a complete light bulb moment for me, sort of thunderbolt, really, thunderbolt and lightning, really, where I just sort of sat there and inside cringed, thinking, oh my goodness, this journey has really just been about me, the difficulties, the challenges, the successes when I finally figured something out and it worked in my body, because everything that we've used in the past kind of doesn't work anymore. And so I was like, I never even considered John, my husband, in this entire process. Like, how could I have missed that? How could I have not even, registered that? It didn't even come up on my radar. And
Mm.
so it was sort of a moment of shock, really, and surprise and realization for me that, wow, I haven't even chatted with John about this. And there he was, blindly going through it in the dark, struggling. One time things would be fine, and then the next thing, my irritation would come up, or my lack of sleep, or my inability to cope, and you're sort of trying to walk on shifting sand, really. And so that was really that moment. And in the room as well was another lady called Heather from Inner Peace Press. And she had said, I'd love to write a book about menopause. And of course, I'd sort of discounted that because I thought, well, that's not really, I'm not interested in doing anything like that. But it was the synchronicity of her business called Inner Peace Press and my business at that time, Release Peace. So you release whatever you're dealing with, and then you find that inner peace. So that link as well. And so we said, yes, let's schedule another call. We'll have a chat and we'll see how we go. And Heather has been, for me, an incredible guide, because this is the first time I've ever written anything like that.
Yeah.
And so we had fortnightly meetings. And if I was feeling overwhelmed, she kind of taught me down and go, right, well, we'll just break it down. We're just going to do this chapter and let's break it down into what do you want to say and how do you want to say it. And of course, I was looking at the whole journey of from start being in the dark to,
Mhm.
the masterclass. So she helped me structure it because, of course, that's her job. So
Mhm.
having someone really, really experienced in this was incredible for me. And so that's when the journey sort of started. So to be honest, Emma, that wasn't on my radar at all. I was looking for women, who were
Yeah.
struggling like myself, and
Yeah.
kind of helping them deal with the various emotions that were coming up. So, you know, um, I think really the book chose me because I couldn't not hear the plea from Richard. I couldn't
Mm.
not think about, because after that I was sort of consumed with, oh my goodness, John, and the missing link really in this. And I
Mm.
also felt profound, it was like a profound sort of energy, like a calling to actually, bring our men folk along with us, to
Yeah.
not leave them separate, because that's sort of where I'd grown up.
Yeah.
Was women, it was women's stuff, it was women's business, and we didn't include the men. And I just felt,
Mm.
actually, we need to change this narrative, and we also need to bring our men into the conversation so that they get it. And also that, if we have children in the household, that they actually see this as normal. We have normal
Mm.
periods, we have normal, having children, giving birth. So all of that now has been normalized. So why not normalize this as another phase?
Yeah.
We're coming into our wise woman phase. Why not normalize that and
Yeah.
allow the guys, even at a younger age, to learn how, and maybe later on things will change as well, that they
Yeah.
might not, but at least they have a little bit more understanding, a lot more compassion, and can actually, with the help of the book, get some strategies in place on what to do. Because what I've found is many, many men don't know what to do. So they end up feeling like they're walking on eggshells, or they then retreat, say
Yeah.
nothing, and disconnect, go into the shed, or, fix the car or whatever, to actually avoid this scenario. And so
Mm.
that's what my intention was, also to give within the book strategies on how to deal with conversations, what to say, how to kind of say it in clean language, and how to kind of address it in a much more gentle way, so that it's opening the conversation, so you're not kind of creating more brick walls or more distance, that you're actually creating an opportunity to join together and to discuss it. So it doesn't make anybody a menopause specialist. That wasn't my
Yeah.
intention. I am
Yeah.
not a doctor,
Mm.
so I don't have all the medical jargon in there,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it is really about just explaining what on earth is going on and how men can actually support women in a more practical way, you
Mm.
know.
Wow, that just sounds like a really valuable resource for any relationship. And when we're talking about men there, I know when we spoke last year at that
Yes.
point, you were in the research stage and you were finding more and more men to ask them
Yes.
about their process. What struck you the most from speaking to the men as you were researching this book? What came to you as sort of the hot topics, as it were?
Mm, mm. Well, a lot of them did recommend, because I asked, one of the questions was, if you could, suggest something for someone who's starting this journey, what
Mhm.
what would you recommend? And many, many, many of them said to do your research, to find out more, to step forward rather than step back. So I think, you know, a lack of education really in terms of the topic, and not only for men, actually, a lot of women that the
Yeah.
men were speaking about, so it was all confidential.
Mm,
They were saying that the women themselves didn't know they were going through menopause. And that's so true,
yeah.
because you're looking at isolated, symptoms rather than looking at it
Mm,
as a whole, because, there's anywhere from 30 to kind of 70 different symptoms. So how can you, as the person going through it, track them when you're being affected by them? So firstly, the men were kind of saying, you know, get more aware,
mm,
learn more, do your research. And then, a lot of the men were saying, when she does have an outburst, don't take it personally,
mm,
that actually the hormones are all over the place hormonally. She's really struggling,
mm,
and, add sleep deprivation on top of that, and then trying to hold down a job if the woman is working,
yeah,
keeping the household going. So, maybe, do a little bit more. And that's what some of the men were saying, was actually they didn't realize how much the woman in the household was the glue and kept everything
mm,
running and everything rolling, until
mm,
she was unable to do that. And so they were saying, that the surprise at how much, their women folk were doing, but
yeah,
also that the men needed to sort of step up a little bit and be more help and be more understanding and much more compassionate. So it was
yeah,
sort of, an evolution of the man as
yeah,
well, really,
yeah,
our men folk, to
yeah,
understand that this is such a major transition for us that we go through. Everything is changing in our bodies, and so things can't stay the same. So there was sort of, an awareness of men. And also, I think a lot of men were saying that the intimacy does wane. For me, my libido just left the planet.
yeah,
It didn't just leave the building.
mm,
So they felt disconnected. They felt isolated, because that's a lot of the ways that we connect as a couple is through
yeah,
intimacy. And when that's not there, that a lot of things are not personal.
yeah,
She doesn't not love you.
yeah,
She does still, but there's just so much else going on, that on, for me anyway, that was the last thing. I was like,
yeah,
I'm just trying to hold everything together right now. I have nothing more to give, and so it has nothing to do with my love for my husband. It's just that
yeah,
I'm just dealing with so much now. So I think
yeah,
there were those sorts of topics and overriding topics, whereby
yeah,
was like, don't take it personally. It isn't personal. She
Yeah.
might be lashing out because, her estrogen is plummeting. And
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
kind of people pleasing, that malleable, that, yeah, peacekeeper
Yeah.
part of us is disappearing. So we're getting an upgrade, a much
Yeah.
more authentic, you know, version of ourselves now. And so that's requiring an adjustment as well from the men. And so I think a lot of men also realized that they had to step up. They couldn't leave it as it was. They had to change as well at some level. Because the men that sort of put their heads in the sand,
Yeah.
that's what happens with the relationship. The relationship then deteriorates, and a lot of the
Mm.
stuff that was unresolved really comes up, and
Yeah.
then that can be the breaking point for the relationship. It's like, I'm moving on, I'm changing, and this person
Mhm.
is doing exactly the same things he was doing 10, 20, 30,
Yeah.
40 years. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So
Yeah. Absolutely.
there was a lot of sort of there was a lot of honesty
Mm.
within the information that the men shared, and I mean, we managed to get 40 men who were willing to talk about their
Mm.
experiences in confidence. And also they were from, different parts of the world. They were different ages. There were different ethnicities as well. So I was really delighted that we got, a good section of
Mm.
men coming through, who were courageous enough actually
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
share something deeply personal about their own relationship and about their
Mm.
awareness and about the menopause themselves, and a
Yeah.
lot of them were, a lot more versed then, and could, you know, understand in code,
Mhm.
what was actually going on
Yeah.
from the, because men don't sit down together, don't chat, don't
No.
talk I think women are find that much easier
Yeah.
to sort of sit down and share when they feel safe and they're, feel
Mm.
trusting, then they're able to. But I don't think men do that often enough. They might have a drink in the pub, but don't
Yeah.
really get to that level.
Mhm.
But I think it's changing. I think it is starting to change. But,
Yeah.
I think a lot of men, are realizing things need to change in themselves and in
Yeah.
the relationship in
Yeah.
order for the relationship to have longevity.
Yeah.
Um, and I think part of it too, as well, is that there is a goal as well,
Mhm.
that the men have a goal to focus on, and the women can kind of know that, okay, it's not going to be. And I think also men assume it's just hot flushes, or they
Mm.
assume it's going to be over in a year.
Yeah.
Newsflash, it isn't. It could it could potentially be, 10 years, 11 years.
Yeah.
Even my mother-in-law, she's 88. She gets hot flushes still.
Wow.
Mm. So, we're talking, she went through that long ago, and
Yeah.
occasionally it could just come up, just kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
So, that thinking, well, okay, in a year we're back to normal. It
Mm.
isn't going to be back to normal. It is moving on, and there are
Yeah.
lots of changes. And I think it is about adaptation, and support
Absolutely.
as well. That
Yeah.
they didn't realize. I think some men really didn't realize that. I think women find it sometimes difficult. I did find it difficult to ask for help.
Mm.
I'm independent and I can do my own thing. So, to ask for help, that can be a big thing. And
Yeah.
so she might be struggling, feeling uncomfortable asking for help.
Yeah.
And then, the man think, well, she can deal with it. She's always dealt with it the last
Mm.
however many years she's been able to cope. So why not now? But actually, there's so many other factors that actually she's not coping.
Yeah.
And that's where sort of there's sort of a silent feeling from the women, is sadness, grief, powerlessness, not being able to fix it. And of course, men love to roll up their sleeves and
Mm.
fix it. This is something that can't be fixed. It needs to be traveled through. It's a journey, and a
Yeah.
journey of evolution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's fascinating, Michelle. And I think it makes me wonder, how was it before we had this information? Because especially in the last few years, I think in
Mm,
particular, maybe it just could be on my radar and be an algorithm, but I'm hearing a lot about the menopause. I suppose it's the first time
yes,
it's been publicly being spoken about,
true.
very much a forgotten topic and
Absolutely.
a bit of a mystery, I think, to a lot of people.
Yes.
And I'm
Yeah.
wondering, I'm just thinking of even pre-menopause, when it come to women and their hormones, men
Mm,
are never really educated around that anyway. So
mm-mm.
then for the marriage to be continuing and then to meet this in their 40s and 50s or
Yes.
whatever age it happens,
Yes.
I'm wondering, obviously there's a huge correlation between divorce at that time of life,
True.
probably as you said there earlier, women becoming more authentic in many ways,
Yes.
stopping the people pleasing
Yes.
and probably in some ways waking up and realizing what they really want. Maybe the
True.
husband not following with them. Did you come across any facts or statistics around age groups in the menopause when it came to failure of marriage or that type of thing?
Yeah, it's about 51%, particularly in the UK, of women
Mm,
initiating divorce through the menopause. So, I mean, that's
yeah,
pretty shocking.
it is, isn't it?
And
Yeah.
I think you're right, Emma. That also women kind of feeling like that's it, I'm done. And
Mm,
not wanting to make it work anymore because the gaps are so huge that
yeah.
it's like, I'm done, I'm out of here, I just can't do
Mm,
this anymore.
yeah, yeah.
And I think each of us do contemplate that. It is part of that evolution. Do
Mm,
I want to continue this relationship? Do I want to keep doing this,
yeah.
or not? And what you said earlier as well, in terms of the menopause, there is a lot more, thankfully, a lot more information now.
Mhm.
Um, and I think before it was very much a silent, hidden topic. Maybe women did talk about it themselves. My mother
Yeah,
certainly didn't share anything about the menopause at all.
yeah.
Recently, when I brought her the book and showed her the book, I asked her about how was the menopause for her, and she just said it was murder.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my God, my poor mother. And
Mm,
it was very challenging for us
mm,
living with her going through the menopause,
yeah,
because it was again that shifting sand. We never knew,
yeah.
whether things were going to be okay or not. And
Mm,
so I think it has been a topic that's been very much in the dark, and men kept out of that
mm,
conversation.
yeah,
And so I think that's it's good that it's coming out now.
yeah.
But I think there is discernment needed in terms of what you follow, and make sure it kind of resonates as well, but also that
Mm.
that you're checking the facts as well. That's so
Yeah,
important too.
yeah,
You know.
definitely. Well,
Mm,
it's not just that, but there's lots of factors, I suppose, inputting into relationships nowadays. Obviously, we have a totally different world. But I read
yes.
recently that by 2027, almost half the population of women over the age of 25 will be single or are single. And I don't know what's happened
Gosh.
to the men, but
Wow.
I think there's that element
Goodness.
of, especially as women get older, choosing to
Mm,
stay single. It's because I guess on some levels, it's not like even 50 years ago where women had to be in a marriage to survive financially.
true.
There's a lot more
Yeah.
independence for women, so they're then
Hmm.
choosing not to be in partnership, which I'm
Yes.
not sure if I agree with either. I think it's really beautiful to have a lovely, loving
Tis.
relationship, but I think, as you
Yes.
said there, maybe the gap is too
Mm,
wide when it gets to, you know, the
yeah.
late 40s, 50s. Just coming back to that as well,
Can
I
I
spoke
can I
about this.
just add something there? Yeah,
Yes, no
sorry,
problem.
just to
Yeah.
interrupt. So I think previously, you know,
Mm,
the men were the ones that were, you know, head of the household, and
yeah.
also brought in. It was different in my family because my mother and father worked together in the same business.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so they
Wow.
had fish and chip shops together.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So they
yeah.
worked together, and we worked with them. So it was a kind of a
Mm,
family thing. But, often what we see is, the man being the breadwinner, and then the women. So
mm,
there was more of a requirement to stay because, there wasn't the social support, there wasn't the cultural support. It was frowned upon to be divorced as well. And so, women, in a sense, had to stay there. And now a lot more women are going out to work. They are, having positions of authority, in a position of power. And so they are in a very, very different place where they are independent. And so they're not in that situation anymore. So therefore they can make different choices.
Yeah.
However, then if you have someone who is going through the menopause in the workplace,
Oh
in a
gosh.
position of power,
Yeah.
yes, indeed. So you're looking at
Oh.
that as also,
Mm.
and that's something that I'm starting to step into, is supporting the men in the workplace to understand what's going on, and to
Oh,
also,
yeah.
have more cohesion there, and more
Mm,
understanding and more compassion. So,
mm,
if because at 50 you are going to have worked your way up through the
yeah.
ranks,
Yeah.
as it were. So you're looking at a different sort of side of things as well.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to bring that in as well, as
Oh, yes,
as
of
a different
course.
perspective, that
Yeah.
we've kind of come out from, the kitchen, as it were, as that song,
Mm.
come
Step
out of
out
the
the
kitchen.
kitchen
Yes,
into the
yeah.
fire.
Yeah, yeah,
No,
yeah.
is that it?
No, we're
Yeah, no.
coming out of the kitchen.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh gosh.
It's
So it's Annie
exactly.
Lennox. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Sisters are doing it for themselves,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
so that's what we're doing. We're coming out of the
Yeah,
kitchen, but we're
yeah.
also going into the place of work and earning our own money, and
Mm.
then also, having those positions of authority
Yeah,
much more. So we've been given more opportunity now,
yeah.
whereas,
Yeah.
CEOs or on the board or whatever, there would
Mhm,
only be men.
mhm.
Now there's a little bit more equality,
Yeah, yeah.
but it wasn't, even when I was, in the industry. I was in the hotel industry before,
Yeah.
and I had looked at an opportunity in the early 90s to
Mm,
actually go to Hong Kong. So I was in Switzerland working, and I wanted to go to Hong Kong to go into the hospitality industry.
mm.
And I was told really clearly from a recruitment agency, not for women. If I wanted to go into housekeeping or front office, they
Uh-huh.
would be able to get a job, but not in food and beverage. Food and beverage was purely for
Ah,
men in Hong Kong.
okay,
So I was
yeah.
offered a position in China, because it was much more liberal at that time, and not as many women were going there. So I said
Mm,
I would take that opportunity. But now that isn't there, you know what I mean? There's much more kind of opportunities out there for women coming up through the ranks. Thank
mm.
goodness. So I just wanted to circle back and add
Yeah,
that. But sorry, yeah,
absolutely. No,
come,
that's a good point. Thanks
you
for
know,
sharing that, Michelle.
yeah, no
And it is
problem,
true,
Emma.
like we live in such a patriarchal society, and even the work week and the work month is designed around men. And I know there's hopefully going to be a lot more discussion around, women and their cycles. And, we do have certain times where we're not quite up for things. And I can only
True.
imagine how that amplifies then in the menopause. So
Yes,
definitely another
yes.
conversation to have. Maybe that's your next book.
I don't know. I don't know. I do know in
Capper.
Spain, though, they do have days when women can take off for their cycle. It isn't part of the
Okay.
sick leave.
Yeah.
It's not part of that. But if
Mm.
if their cycle is really challenging at that
Mm.
point, then,
Yeah.
they can take a day, or two,
Yeah. Okay.
as
Yeah,
to
that's a
support
great
them.
idea.
But I don't know. I'm not going to discount a second
Yeah,
book,
you never
but
know. I love
you
the
never
idea.
know. You never know.
I
But
love
boy, oh
it.
boy, oh boy. I mean,
Yeah.
giving birth to this one, Emma,
Yeah.
has been huge. Just let
They
me
say the
recoup.
second one's
Yeah.
easier. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, I know what I'm heading into,
Yeah,
but oh my
exactly. Maybe it'll be
goodness. Yeah.
easier. Yeah. So I'd love to
Who
hear more
knows?
about that process as well, Michelle. But before we
Okay.
do, I know you've pointed out a few great things about the Emotional Handbook and how it's going to help men and women in their
Yes.
relationship.
Yes.
So if you were to point out like an important thing that you want men and women to understand about what happens to a relationship during the menopause, what would you say would be the key points that they need to take on board?
Well, definitely listening. definitely the
Mm,
chance to listen and sit down, and kind of ask, how are you doing? Putting the phones away, switching off the TV, and just ask, how are you doing? That at least just stopping. I think, I've taught meditation and mindfulness for many, many years. So I think it is really about being present. And we
mm,
do need to stop to come out of the technological world and actually reconnect. So, if you're having a picnic, great, go out in the garden, and then talk about it, so you're actually taking the time to stop and listen without the phone, without any distraction. So
yeah,
being very present, I think that's important to both parties, men and women, that you're actually taking the time, and spending time together, so that you are taking time out in nature.
yeah,
Maybe after the meal, having a walk together, so that you're moving, because walking is so good for us if we've got, menopausal symptoms. It's
mm,
great for clearing the head, but it's also, I had one client who said that she never bought a coat for 5 years because she just didn't need it. She was roasting all the time. Do you know what I mean? So we can get out in
mm,
the fresh air, we
yeah,
can clear our minds, we can have some movement as well, but it's also a chance to reconnect,
yeah, I
and,
love that.
finding out, because the time changes as well. So if you're not sleeping,
Mhm,
not having conversations at night time, because that's when you're exhausted. So waiting until the morning, when perhaps she's had a little bit more time to have rest.
yeah,
Maybe taking some of the chores that are done in the morning off of her, so that she can sleep in and
yeah,
rest, when she finally
yeah,
does get to sleep, that kind of thing,
yeah, that's a great tip.
so those sorts of things is
Mm,
kind of just being there as a support. So,
yeah,
and maybe for women also to share a little bit more about what's
mhm,
actually happening, and how
yeah,
challenging
yeah,
it can be, until we find the right, when we find the right remedy and it clicks. It's like, oh my God, thank God, now I'm back on
yeah,
track and I'm feeling good and I feel like I can, take on the world again. But,
yeah,
until we do that, we're kind of schlepping ourselves through the day,
yeah,
especially if we're not sleeping. That's such a big thing,
yeah. Oh,
you know.
definitely, definitely. And
Yeah.
in terms of the actual handbook, as you were sharing there, some of the advice, the
Yes.
contents of the book itself, I think you explained earlier, it has exercises as well. It's very much,
Yes.
it is a handbook. So it's
Yes.
for the everyday man and woman, would you say? I
Yes.
mean, as you said, you didn't
Yes.
use lots of scientific jargon. You wanted to be
No.
approachable. You wanted the tone of the book and the
Yes.
flow of the book to be a certain level. Would
Yes.
you mind sharing for listeners exactly what they could expect if they're to buy this book?
Sure. Thank you. Yeah. So it's very much a journey, Emma. So
Mm,
it starts at the very beginning, basics, what on earth is going on? And you've noticed the shifts, you've noticed the changes, but you're not sort of putting it together.
mm,
So it starts with that, and then it moves through to communication, to patience, to understanding. It gives all the way through strategies of what I've found useful, whatever the clients have found useful, um, and then takes you through then the journey of, understanding, and then going into the masterclass of, the evolution of the man as well as the woman. So there's 11 chapters, and with each chapter there's sort of strategies to help, sort of first aid strategies, what to do, how to jump in
mhm.
straight away, what not to do, maybe not to jump in and say something. So there's
Yeah,
those. There's also mindful questions, reflective questions as well, so that they can take some time out. And the book doesn't have to be read in one go. You can dip in and
mm,
out of the different chapters, but just taking that time just to pause and think about, okay, how is this benefiting me? How are we changing as a couple? How are we strengthening our relationship? What things in our communication might need to shift and might need to change.
yeah,
So it sort of takes a person from a basic level through the understanding. There's also a chapter about the home base, on what things that men could do to help the home base, our home, be a little bit cooler, maybe, a little bit more quieter, a little bit more relaxed. Then there's also a chapter for the wingman himself. So because his needs are important, how he needs to recharge his own batteries, because you can't give from an empty cup. And then it moves on then into more of kind of spiritual or awareness aspects. And inviting the wingman then to also maybe get support, to maybe look at some of the patterns and the triggers that are coming up for them. Because clearly, if you're not getting that connection, because, women need to feel loved to be intimate, and men need to be intimate to feel loved. So when that stops, then there are things that will come up naturally. So there is an invitation for the wingman then, for them to also look at some of their own patterns and their own challenges, and to get support and help. So, I'm helping women with the emotions, but I'm also helping men as well, so that they can actually see clearly, that they can understand why this is affecting them in the way it is, to have that kind of aha moment, and then to be able to strengthen the relationship, because that's really the goal at the end of the book, is really to have much better communication, understanding, compassion, love, so that they have now a joint goal, that they can head together in a new direction, with a new goal, with better tools. So once you've survived, or been able to thrive through the menopause, the relationship is so much stronger. So then you know that anything that comes your way, you have a wingman, she has a wingman, and he has someone who is so grateful and so happy that, he's been there for her. So therefore, there's that kind of bond that is cemented again, because in the beginning of the relationship, that is there clearly, but then over time, with, challenges, parents dying, children growing, leaving the house, there's so many different things that you actually really do need to kind of reassess, regroup, and then start to head in a new direction. So that's really the journey of the book is, and the intention of the book is to strengthen the relationship, to kind of have that stronger love, stronger connection, and a better communication between the two of them. And then those other kind of factors really that are in the mix that create that separation, they are healed. So that's where, if women are wanting to deal with the emotions that come up and find out where they link to, and similarly men, then there is someone who can support them, you know what I mean, and help them. Because, that's really the key for me, is to have a longevity of the relationship. That's that's my focus,
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
beautiful, Michelle. Because
Thank you, Emma.
unfortunately, in this world today, very few people stick with a relationship if it's rocky, and they tend to leave quite easily. We're hoping that with more communication around
Yeah.
these topics, and the idea of strengthening the relationship after that difficult moment is very hopeful, I think, is exactly.
Mm,
You spoke
mm.
also, we were talking earlier, Michelle,
Yes.
you have plans to create support groups, and you have actually started thinking of this, which I
Mm,
think is wonderful, because taking the information from the book and actually having real conversations around the menopause, would you mind
mm.
sharing with the listeners a little bit about that and when that might be available?
Thank you, Emma. Well, I'm
Mm.
hoping to get it sorted. I've got quite a bit to do now on the website,
Yeah.
because I just have been so busy that sort of has fallen by the wayside, the
Mm.
menopausewingman.com website. So I've been spending a lot of time on that, and my next task is the group. So
Yeah.
with speaking with women,
Yeah.
a lot of women have said they would like to share together. They would like to sit together and talk openly, freely as women. So I thought that would be a great thing to do, to have once a month women to come together, nice cup of tea in a beautiful location in Cove, and be able to share
Yeah.
and without any judgment, and obviously confidential, where they can share and talk about what's going on. And
Mm,
it's kind of a sharing group, so that
lovely.
we're sharing. It's not just coming from me, but it is a supportive
Yeah.
group together. So I decided I would do that. And then, there was a call for a men's group. So I said, yes, let's do that.
Mm,
And so I asked my husband, would he be interested? So he said yes. So he would be interested in being part of that as well. So there's both myself and my husband
yeah.
leading that one together. And then
Yeah.
I thought about, well, what about the people who couldn't make it, who were overseas and wouldn't be able to make it? So I'm thinking about doing a weekly group, then an
Mm,
online group, so people
love
can
that.
kind of dip in and out of that as and
Yeah.
when they need to, and get either support or,
Yeah.
share. I think it's very much about sharing, because we're all individual. So,
Mm,
what worked for me m- may or may not work for somebody else, but there's someone
yeah.
else in the group who has a similar situation or a
Yeah.
similar experience, and they could share their experience. So I think that's my intention, is to have a wealth of knowledge within the group,
Mm,
to share. And so we can do that online now,
yeah.
and so that's really it. So my intention would be in September. So I'm thinking more towards the end of September, and then it would be kind of
Yeah.
moving on from there, because I still have quite a few things to do. Emma, I didn't realize, you know, I have given birth to many businesses in the past.
Yeah.
So since I started in 1998,
Yeah.
I had my first business, which was called the Mind Body Spirit Clinic. And
Yeah.
that took 2 to 3 years to kind of really, come
Mm,
up. I was writing articles in newspapers, going on the radio, on the
mm,
TV, and I was really kind of going for it.
yeah.
And I was in my 30s, and then when I left my husband
Yeah.
in New Zealand and got divorced, and then came back to Wales, I
Mm,
started another business called Release at Peace. So we release all that stuff, and then we are at peace.
mm,
And so, I've been working with that and adding lots of strings to my bow as I've carried on. And now
mm.
this is like another birthing
Yeah.
process of the Menopause Wingman. So it's
Yeah.
sort of taking time and
Yeah.
energy to really
Yeah.
birth this,
Yeah.
and to
Yeah.
get things up and running. And of course, there was the groundswell was unbelievable at the beginning, that I was just swamped. So I was trying just to keep my head up above water.
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
really left the website. I was like, I cannot be doing that now,
Yeah.
along with everything else,
Yeah.
which was doing the podcasts, going on TV, on the
Mm,
radio, keeping up with social media, all of that sort of thing,
yeah.
and clients, keeping the clients going. So it was
Yeah.
kind of, I was very much kind of just keeping my head up above the waterline.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so the
Mm,
last few days, I finally started to,
yeah.
look at the website and get it up and running to a place where I feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah.
there's
You've
still a
done
few
so
more
much.
pages. Oh, it's huge. It's
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but also, Michelle, I think you're a reminder to us that, it's never too late to start again,
No.
and I think if people listen back to your first podcast episode with me, we talked all about your journey, and I
Uh-huh.
know some of you are listening to you right now and realize she says she lives in Cove, but she's not Irish.
No.
And you'll hear the story of how she met her husband, John, but I just know
Yes.
from have had
Yes.
TV appearances, you're on Ireland AM recently,
Yes.
and I
Yes.
saw your
Yeah.
lovely
In
husband,
July.
John, sitting
Yes.
beside you and with you all the way. I mean, what a man, honestly, what a man.
True. True.
Would you mind just
Yeah.
sharing briefly, like, how has this all been for him, this whole journey, from obviously he's been there supporting you in the
He
background,
has.
create this book, and also
He
with you
has.
on some of the press tours as well.
Yes. Yeah. It's been quite a journey, because he was working full time.
Mm,
And only about 6 weeks ago, he
mm,
retired. So he's been swept up in this as
yeah,
well, and he's been a huge advocate,
yeah,
and helped massively on the book launch as well.
yeah, yeah,
He was incredible there. So it's been a kind of a trajectory for both of us, really,
Mm,
bless him. So I think he worries that I will burn out, that
mm.
I'm doing so much. But Emma, this is something that I'm really passionate about. So
Oh,
it
yeah.
doesn't feel like work to me.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm
Yeah.
loving it and I'm enjoying it. So I
Yeah.
think his caring nature's still coming out. It's like, you okay? Do you
Yeah,
want a cup
yeah.
of tea? And I'm like, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
please.
You
So it's lovely. So it's kind of shifted. So
Yeah.
he's helping so much more now around the house because of course he was gone for 12 hours. So
Yeah. Wow.
I had my space and I was doing everything else. So
Yeah.
it's been really
Yeah.
lovely, to have him here and support me from that. So
Yeah.
yeah, he knew he contributed to the book, but he also read it. And
Yeah.
there was his feedback in there too.
Oh, that's
So
amazing.
he said to me, that was all. So that was sent away. It was all confidential. So I didn't know who was
Yeah.
saying what. But he said to me, this book is going to help so many people. This is
Yeah.
going to be huge. So he actually saw the potential of it right at the beginning as well,
Yeah. Oh,
and so he has been, my
yeah.
cheerleader really there,
Amazing.
100%. And also, my sister's family, my sister's passed now, but oh my
Yeah.
goodness, they've been cheering me on and my friends as well. It's been
Oh,
so lovely. Like for the
yeah.
book launch, they came over. So my
Yeah.
niece
Yeah.
came over and her
Yeah.
partner, and my brother-in-law, he came over with his new partner, and it was
Yeah.
just so wonderful. So yes, I am Welsh. I actually have become an Irish citizen. So
Oh,
I
yes.
don't. Yeah. So this was in June as well, right after the
Oh,
book
all of it
launch.
happened at
Oh my
once.
God, I know. It's just like a crescendo of stuff. So I
Yeah.
feel very, very blessed
Yeah.
to have Irish citizenship
Yeah.
now. I mean, that's massive.
That's
But
so lovely.
it's
It's nice to
been
have
a
you.
real journey. Thank you. I'm so happy
Yeah.
to be part of the
You're not
clan.
English, so it's okay. She said, it's okay,
Oh,
everyone.
it's okay, everyone. Well, the thing is, in North Wales, there's just so many
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
It's there. You don't have that
I know,
beautiful
it's strange.
sing-song Welsh,
Yeah. Yeah.
accent from the
Yeah.
south, or
Yeah. Yeah.
up into the mountains in North
Yeah.
Wales. You will
Yeah.
hear that, but yeah,
Yeah.
I went to
Wow.
school with lots of people from Manchester, Liverpool,
Yeah.
Birmingham,
Yeah.
Leeds. So I've been surrounded by that really. So
No,
yeah,
that's lovely.
so there
But
you
it's
go.
interesting, Michelle, even thinking back to, I would have rang you. I don't even know when it was. I got your name from someone and they told me you have to speak to this lady because I
Oh
had said to him
yeah.
that I had started a podcast and he said, you need to contact this lady. She's fascinating.
Uh,
And I remember I called you and at
uh-huh.
the time I think I was in the countryside and I remember actually the specific moment that I took the call
Hmm.
and we were chatting for quite a while and
Yeah.
what I felt from speaking to you anyway at that moment in my life was you gave me a lot of hope for someone who's in their
Oh
40s, starting again in some shape or form, in many shape and form for me anyway. And you
yes.
really gave me a lot of hope in how your life had kind of taken a different turn as well. But you
Yes.
found your feet eventually. And, now
I
as
did.
well, it's not all about just finding love, but you found yourself and
Yes.
you're now on this lovely next part of your life, which I think
Yes.
is a beautiful journey as well.
Yeah. Well, I have good genes. My mother is 97. She has
Yeah,
dementia and Alzheimer's. So I
yeah,
figure I have another 30 years ahead of me. So why not? That's
yeah,
that's a lot more than unfortunately my sister got.
you know,
She passed away at 68. So, I really feel like I really want to make the most of it, for her as well as
mm,
myself. But also I think the myth perhaps in a lot of relationships is that we're here until death do us part. And I know after I left my marriage, the first marriage, that I felt so guilt ridden that I'd actually had left because that wasn't part of the plan. But
mm,
things were so difficult that I actually couldn't stay. And I see now that I wouldn't have been able to do this if I'd have been there. Like my life would
yeah,
have been completely different. Um, but I realized it was the death of the relationship. So it wasn't a physical death. It was actually the
Yeah.
emotional death and the spiritual death of the relationship. That's
Mm.
where I felt it was no longer for me. And that's when I did come home. And there was a huge amount of grieving for the relationship, for leaving New Zealand as well, because I loved it over there and I had fantastic friends who I still keep in touch with. Um, but it was like I had to go through that grieving process, and that also, was another transformational
Yeah.
experience for me. And then realizing actually I can start again. So I think that's where, and I think when you've spoken with someone who's kind of gone through that, as
Yeah.
the phoenix
Yeah.
rises again, gone through that fire, definitely, I think,
Yeah.
even when I was in New Zealand, I knew of a gentleman and he was in his 90s, and his so he had kept in touch with the au pair of his
Mm.
children. So his wife had passed away and they were writing together, and she was in Germany. And at one point, he was struggling. She was a nurse, and at one point, he was struggling with his health. And he said, "Why don't you come over? Why don't you come over and
Mm.
let's spend a bit of time together?" And she ended up staying. Now, she was 68, and he
Yeah.
was in his 90s, sort of late 80s to
Wow.
early 90s.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they started a relationship after, like, they'd never been in a relationship, but
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
she was actually his carer and she looked after him. And he was, he lasted another 8 years with her care. And I just thought, wow, how courageous to leave
Mm.
Germany to fly all the way to New Zealand.
Yeah.
She clearly cared about him and she
Mm.
started again. And I was like, wow, I don't think
Mm.
there's ever a time limit then on this. And one of my
Yeah.
clients that I was working with in New Zealand, I can't remember that I talked to you about that, but she was in her 60s and she left her husband.
Mm.
She studied for a PhD and she said, "This is what I've always wanted to do. It's my time now. I figure I've got 20,
Mhm.
25 years. I might as well go for it." And she was thriving with the studies.
Yeah.
And so I've had a few women, you know, similar to you, but a few women who have shown me also that there are opportunities. And my own mother as well. She,
Mm.
after the menopause, her brother passed away. So her brother passed away unexpectedly in bed, and he was, very,
Mm.
he had a very, very high powered job. And her sister, as a result of that, had a stroke. And so she said, "Why are we working? Like, why are we almost killing ourselves here? My
Mhm.
brother's died. He had a high powered position and he died of a heart attack in bed. My sister's now, as a result of that, has had a stroke. What are we
Yeah.
doing?" And so they sold up. They sold up the fish and chip shop. They offered it to me, and I was like, "No way, I want to travel."
Yeah.
I was 20 at the time, 18, 20, and I wanted to travel and see the world. And so they bought a boat and they went down to the canals in France. They got their license and they sailed
Mhm.
across the canal. British Channel, and they went down into the French canals, and then they came back and they lived on the Norfolk Broads for a while, and then they didn't want to do that anymore, so they got a camper van, and they would be
Yeah.
3 months over in Switzerland. My mum is Swiss, so
Yeah.
3 months over in Switzerland, traveling, seeing all of her friends, and then they would come back and travel in the camper van around
Wow.
Europe, around Wales, around the UK.
Yeah.
Um, and so I saw that there are options here. There are new
Mm.
opportunities that we don't have to kind of be set,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
we given. And I think that's what Richard really kindly gave me, is a new chapter, literally,
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah.
and a new opportunity to kind of
Yeah.
pivot again,
Yeah.
and that's really what I did was, and I think when it's so powerful inside that you just
Mm.
have that, and I'm getting chills as I say that, it was so potent that kind of light bulb moment. I was like, I cannot not do this now. I have
Yeah.
to go in this direction,
Yeah.
wherever it might lead, and I
Yeah.
feel so supported in that. So if I can share a tiny bit of hope to your listeners,
Yeah.
and that, there was a spark there between you and I as well, in terms of,
Mm,
this isn't the end. This is
mm,
another chapter. And let's continue on, then my job is done, and I'd
mm.
be really happy with that,
Yeah, I love
yeah.
that because that was actually, would you believe, my last question to you really
What's
was,
that?
what has following this calling taught you about yourself, and what would you say to someone who feels called to create or pursue something but is still
Ah,
hesitating?
go for it. Just go for it. Um, you know, it's really revealed a lot about myself, about my strengths,
Mm,
that I didn't even know existed. Like, I never thought of writing a book.
mm,
Um, I think when the calling is that strong, you will be supported. And I've seen that. We have been
yeah,
so supported in this, with meetings and people offering to do things and supporting and helping
mm,
me. And, I never, it's like I never thought about going on the TV. I just sent, and I had just something drop in my head.
yeah,
Firstly, about, so I was trying to get someone to do the foreword for the book, and I'd
mm,
asked a friend who had a doctor who specialized in menopause, and they just disappeared.
yeah,
It just never happened. I was waiting for six
yeah,
months. On New Year's Day, I was at home and I was thinking, I really need someone to write the foreword, and then just dropped in
mm,
my head Loretta Dignam. So I thought, I'm going to write to her. So I just boldly, no fear,
yeah,
I reached out to her, emailed her, and said,
mm,
"Would you consider it?" She said, "Great idea, yes, of course." And I was crying. I was so
yeah,
so delighted. And then the same
yeah,
thing with the TV. I thought, oh, maybe I'll write to,
mm,
to the TV3 network. I just
yeah,
fired off an email. So that's it. I think, coming from that place of no expecting, not
mm,
non-expectance, and just going, okay, it dropped. I was sort of thinking, oh, there, yeah, well, why not?
yeah,
Why not? And so, why not
yeah,
write a book? Why not write to these people? Why not ask them? And
yeah,
they can only say no. And if that's the case, they might lead me on to someone else, or they might suggest something else. And that's
yeah,
how it's been. Like, I was on a call. So I had had to renew my Swiss passport, and I was
mm,
sitting in the office in London, because Dublin doesn't have the machine to do that,
mm,
to do the passport and the new passports. So I was sitting there, I was just reading, and then in this magazine, it was like, if you're looking to share any news in the UK or Ireland, anything you want to share with us, if you're Swiss, write to us. And I thought, I do have something to share.
yeah,
Here we go. So that led me to emailing them. I had an
yeah,
interview with them. That's going to be in another, it's going to be in October. That's going to be in one of their publications. And
yeah,
then they said to me, the two ladies, have you contacted the Swiss ambassador? And I was like, no, and they was like, well, why don't you? And I was like,
yeah,
yeah, why don't I? So I got in touch with her through LinkedIn,
yeah,
messaged her, no, invited her to the book launch. She said,
mm,
unfortunately, I'm going to be up in Donegal, but I'm really
mm,
interested in the book. The topic is amazing. If you're
yeah,
ever in Dublin, say hi.
yeah,
Anyway, that didn't happen, but I got an invite then to the Swiss National Day celebrations. And John and I went up, and I walked in. I had a copy of my book, but I wasn't showing that
yeah,
initially. I had it in my bag. And I walked up and she said, "Oh, Michelle, I'm so glad you're here." I was blown away. And then
yeah,
we took her to one side later and gave her a copy of the book.
oh,
And she was
amazing,
thrilled about it. But I mean, that
yeah,
took me on a journey. And
yeah,
I'm going to be joining the Swiss Club. And then we ended up going to another Swiss celebration, which we met
yeah,
some people. So, it's just that saying
yeah,
yes.
exactly, yeah, yeah, taking that leap of faith,
Taking that
isn't it?
leap of faith. I think Goethe said, leap and the net appears.
Yes, I love that one. I love that one.
you know.
Well, you're certainly an
Yeah.
inspiration, Michelle,
Thank you,
and
Emma.
it's just been so special to have you back with me
It's
again. I know
been
we had a few
wonderful.
technical
We
issues, but
did.
we made it happen.
We did,
Um,
Emma. Oh my God. And so I'm
I do.
grateful to you, Emma, for the
Yeah,
opportunity to come back, and grateful
yeah,
to your listeners and your viewers as
yeah,
well, for staying with us till the
yeah.
end,
I know
So,
it's been
so
a long
grateful.
conversation. They can
Yeah.
pause
Yeah.
and come back. But
Yeah.
also they hopefully people can revisit your episode 8, because I do think
Okay.
your story in itself of the journey of how you got here, it's
Oh,
amazing. And I think what
thank
I
you.
took from really everything about your life is that when you trust something before it's guaranteed, as you said,
Yeah.
cast the net or
Yeah.
take the leap and the
Yeah.
net will appear.
Yeah.
I think
Yes.
that's really what sums up the way that you've
Oh,
approached life, which I love, I
yeah.
love.
Thank you.
And it's just a beautiful reminder to all of us that we don't always have to see the entire path to take, the
No,
next
I
step.
think that intuition, and my sister said it so beautifully, when I came home from New Zealand, she said to me, if you feel it in your body and it feels like a yes, it's a yes.
Yeah,
Anything else is a no. So you don't
exactly.
have to kind of figure it out in your head.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
just feel it. Is it a full body yes, like it was with Richard?
Mm,
Even though I had discounted it, it was like it came in so strongly. It was like,
yeah,
okay, I can't not do it.
yeah,
I have to do this. But that kind of has given me an ease of following things.
yeah.
So even when we are trying, like we did last time, we were trying to get online, we were trying to do it. That was a no. It was a
I
clear
know.
no. And it was like, now, today, you
Wow.
know, I'm in a much better place.
Yeah,
We jumped on, it was
yeah.
easy, it's
Easy.
flowed, and
Yeah.
that's it. So it's like it's yes, and anything else is a no.
Exactly. That's the lesson, isn't it, Michelle?
It
And,
is.
people want to find out more about you.
Yeah,
I know you have menopausewingman.com.
I do.
Your book itself, I'll add the link down
Thank
below
you.
in the
Thank you,
notes.
Emma. Yeah.
But is there anything else in terms of how people can search for you? I know that main website is going to have a lot of the information. You've got
Yeah,
Instagram of the same name as
I
well.
do. Menopause
Yeah.
Wingman, and there's michellehardwick.com.
Mm,
That's the first website I have. So
yeah.
I'm going to be kind of updating that a little bit to
Yeah.
the other strings in my bow that I'm
Yeah.
not getting rid of. I'm still doing those running
Yeah.
parallel. So there's Menopause Wingman or michellehardwick.com.
Fabulous.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
just so grateful, Emma, that we
Yeah.
managed to connect again, and
Yeah.
so grateful
Definitely.
for your time as well, and for
Yeah.
inviting me back. It's lovely
Yeah.
to come back
Oh, it's a
and
pleasure. It's an
share.
absolute pleasure.
Thank
I'm the
you.
lucky one.
Thank
Honestly,
you.
Michelle, congratulations on
Thank
everything
you,
you have
Emma.
achieved, and I know what you will achieve again in the future. I'm really looking forward to continuing to witness your journey, and
Thank you.
thank you for
Thank you.
joining us
Thank
again
you so,
on
so
Soul
much.
Sessions with
Yeah.
Emma.
Thank you.